if I have to again brief it in short, then basically one, U Business School is a ranked business school. It has got 3 campuses located at 3 prominent locations. One in Barcelona, Spain, second is in Munich, Germany, and third is in Geneva, Switzerland. In terms of basically programs, the bachelor's and the master's cost you around 11 to 12 lakhs, as well as the MBA cost you somewhere around 17 to 18 lakhs per year. In terms of other things, U is known for experiential learning because the professors that Shanice taught, it has a career service, which is very well known. The career service helps you in preparing your resume, in having a one-on-one counseling, in basically company visits, and that's happening. And 97% was that was the placements around 97%.
Yeah, 96% to be
96%. Sorry. So these are very, very different, unique things. One more thing that I want to tell about student is basically student can take experience of more than one campus. So they can join at Barcelona and they can switch to Munich as well, or they can join at Munich and then switch to Geneva, or they can take experience of different campus. This is important because you are going there to meet students, meet different culture, learn different. That helps you to grow. If that helps you, that's your reason. And you have so much of programs. Besides management, you have IT, you have cloud computing, and so many other programs. So wonderful. So let's start with the Q&A sessions, and I'm sure basically, there will be questions on chat as well. But first and foremost, basically what students are worried about is mostly about jobs. I would take the job question first, and then we'll take the other questions. So with the COVID situations, students are still not able to understand whether it is right time to study abroad, whether they should wait. How is job situation in Europe, and how do students should look forward to it?
Thank you for that, Richard, for summing up EU Business School and also for that question. I think in terms of economically speaking, just to give you a comparison, pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? So pre-COVID, the unemployment rate in Munich was sitting at 3.2%. Currently, it's about 4%. So that is the, I would say, the small hit that Munich has taken during COVID. There was an article released about a month or two ago about Germany still requiring about 500,000, skilled labor. And that is why Germany has always focused more on master's and MBA students as compared to bachelor students and them getting into the country. We have seen visa approvals with probably only a 2% rejection rate because of this, because of the requirement for skilled labor. Compared to Barcelona is really good for the tourism industry. We've seen a lot of pickup over there. We've seen, as I mentioned, in the finance department and also in the fashion and luxury business management, we've seen a lot of pickup in terms of economic demand in those sections. And Geneva, I mean, what can I say? I don't think the Swiss economy ever drops. Even if you look at the conversion rate today, compared to if you compare it to the Indian rupee, the Swiss franc at this point in time is stronger as compared to the euro, at least in terms of the conversion from Indian rupees. Of course, if you compare the euro and the franc, the euro is still battling at maybe a point 10 cents or 20 cents higher than the Swiss franc. But I think the Swiss franc determines how strong, economically speaking, the country is. Yes, in terms of economical stability, I would say it's obviously Germany and Switzerland at power. So the Munich and Geneva campus at power, followed by Barcelona, because it's not as strong as these two economic hubs. But even with COVID, being there drastically, lockdowns after lockdowns, Munich had the worst lockdown, even as compared to other cities in Germany. As you know, every state takes its own decision. And it probably had the worst lockdown possible. But still, the economy did not fail or crash because of the impacts that COVID had. It bounced back up. The unemployment rate is still remaining low. The salaries are intact. Nobody's getting fired. So I think nobody can get fired, of course, but there are no layoffs as such. So I think everything is going well so far, and the economy is doing really well.
Perfect. So as you rightly said, Germany has a very strong economy in terms of basically, and if it is at 4.2, it's hardly much compared to basically other countries. And with you has his own placement services and good network with the industries. We know basically people from industry who come and regularly basically do that leadership program. And besides other campuses, Barcelona and Geneva, you have strong. So in terms of job opportunities, they are good. Now you also invite companies, and you have this talent program as well. So in terms of basically student, how do you prepare them for this basically talent program, and what activities you do so that the students get recruitment, and what role does you business school play there?
Again, a very valid question. When you talk about, company visits, you talk about guest speakers, learning from leaders, as we've renamed the series. It happens on a bi-weekly process, right? Because the bachelor students have more time on hand, at least during the first year, we include company visits into their schedule. But if a master's student wants to join in, they can put themselves on the waiting list and they can definitely join a company visit. But you basically get to meet different executives at different levels in the company, understand the working of the company, understand the the CSR policy of the company as well. And I think it's a very if you go onto our Instagram page, I think you'll see a lot of the company visits that we do, either during the program, during our business summer school programs, our international summer school programs. You'll see it happening all year round. So there are about 58 companies that we visit per year. We have about, I would say, about 50 guest speakers that come onto campus to talk to our students. And that is where the actual networking happens. That is where you can connect with them on LinkedIn. And in terms of the talent days, what I would say is that we know as an institution, has a career service department, is aware about 2 months before the talent day about the people that are going to be visiting the campus. So a serious student that is in touch with the career service department will be able to get a hold of the companies that are coming onto campus. They will get a hold of the email addresses of HR, get in touch with them on LinkedIn, okay, or send them an email directly. But LinkedIn is mostly the way you go. It's a more impersonal way of going about it. And saying, hey, I heard you're visiting e-business school. This is my CV. It would be nice to touch base with you on the day of the talent day. But I just want like to introduce myself in advance, so they know who you are. It's you taking an extra step, because as you know, Richard, in Europe, we've spoken about this several times earlier as well. But in Europe, it's more about the student approaching the company and not the other way around. It's not the system in India that we follow. So yeah, for us to organize the talent day becomes very difficult, because it's like the companies are like, why are you calling us over, right? But we obviously need to satisfy the demands of students as well, because we at the end of the day want to give them what they've come for, which is education and a working experience in Europe as well. And that is what we strive towards. It's quality over anything else.
Perfect. Whether it is in Europe or US or UK or any other country, it is the student who has to reach out and not other way around. So, it's not like India where you have this campus interview going on. You will have to approach to the company and you have to show your interest, and then only you have a chance of getting recruitment. That's good. About the language, because European Union, Europe is a non-native English-speaking country, and do the student have to learn the local language before they go, or after they go, basically they can, U Business School is offering B1, B2 German
A1,
courses, A1, A2 German courses, and how do the student prepare basically, in terms of job opportunities, also in terms of getting part-time job also, how is language very important?
So that's another very good question in terms of the language perspective. There are a lot of tips I like to give my students, and I think I'll include it. I'll just put it in a nutshell. But basically, when you go into any of these cities, be it Munich, be it Barcelona, be it Geneva, okay, everyone, I would say at least 80% of the people speak English. They're very international cities, they're very touristy cities. So people are bound to speak English considering those factors. What I would say is obviously it's an edge if you do know the language, if you do know at least an A1 or an A2 level of German or Spanish or French. But it's not something that we make a compulsion. We have seen students succeed. Okay, if they go onto campus, they pick up the the pronunciations correctly, they pick up the lingua correctly, and that is what is important, right? Now, some students, depending on again budgets, it's very important to understand that if you want to throw yourself into a part-time job, which I highly don't recommend, then obviously it is better if you learn German before, for the simple reason that it's not like you won't get a part-time job without German. You will get a part-time job without German language, without the proficiency of the language. But at the end of the day, you're letting go of a very important part of your full-time job search process, right? Because you obviously have like a chunk of jobs over there. And then if you just narrow yourself down only to the English-speaking jobs, you're losing out on at least about 40 to 50% of the market. So what I would say is, if you want I've always spoken to my colleague Nick, based out in Geneva, and he's always said, the student is here and the student needs to get here. Okay, so you have to basically be at A and get to D, but you have to cross B and C to get to D. You cannot jump from A to D. So it's always a process. It's always to get out there and to be there. And what I always tell students is, if you want to have like a full experience of being on campus, okay, learn at least the A1 level of German, get onto campus, okay, get into the lifestyle of living in Munich or Geneva or Barcelona, adapting to the cultures, okay, then going for your part-time job in the second semester. See how you're faring from a study perspective, because as I mentioned earlier also during the presentation, it is a very, very different lifestyle as compared to an Indian education system. The Indian education system and the international education system that we follow is, poles apart. We're looking at parrot learning over here, and on the other hand, in Europe, we're looking at really, understanding and then answering. It's a lot of group work, it's a lot of assignments. So it's a lot of time-based more than really putting in the theoretical hours. So what I would say is, in one word, is really time management is of key in this sense. I know it was it was not a really clear-cut answer, but yeah, there is no harm in students learning German on campus. Just to clear that out, there's no harm on it, as long as you are going to tell yourself that I'm going to manage my time and I'm going to take out 2 hours of my day to learn the class on campus. Because see, the German language classes are available, they are free on campus, but they're not involved into your timetable. So there are some students that might choose a part-time job over learning the German language. Now that is not going to benefit you in the future. Okay, that will definitely give you an hourly wage, which will help you from a living expenses perspective. But if you don't know the language, you're basically delaying yourself in terms of getting a full-time job, because students get jobs, but the timeline during which they get their jobs will differ whether or not they know German.
Perfect. It's very important what you said is look at the long-term goal, why you have gone for study abroad, and it's very important that you go to that process from A, you have to go to B and C, and then finally to D. So that makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to go for those short part-time jobs, that can help you, but in the long term, you are looking to get a full-time job. That's your intention of going to study abroad. So learning language is not compulsory, not mandatory, but if you know the language, you have an advantage, and that advantage can help you basically in understanding, in talking to people, in basically getting jobs as well. And further, basically you conduct those German classes, so that would be on your resume anyway when you are going to go for your job. So now, before I go for the scholarship, one important thing that I always tell is, you're going abroad for networking, and you has the strongest alumni network, in terms of networking. So how can student reach out to these alumni, and how does these alumni in contact with the students? Can you tell us a little bit on that?
Okay, sorry, I didn't get the last part. If you could just repeat that.
How can the students interact with the alumni, and how can they take the benefit of the alumni network?
So in terms of the alumni network, as I mentioned earlier, there is a LinkedIn group that is present. The career counselors across all the 3 campuses are in touch with alumni. There are a lot of alumni networks that happen as well. So students can definitely attend those, interact with them. Some of the Learning from Leaders series happen on a larger scale, wherein they don't happen on campus, but they happen at a hotel. So a lot of our alumni are invited for those events as well. So that's another way to interact with them. But as long as you know names of people, you've seen them, attending an online session, you can get in touch with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm a current student at EU Business School, shortly to finish my program. I think the company that you're working for would suit, the specialization that I've completed EU Business School. Do you have any jobs out there? So it's very, very proactive in terms of the alumni group present.
Perfect. Now that we have covered the major part, which is job, which is a lot of concern, the next important is cost cutting. So they are looking at scholarship. So when you are looking at scholarship, you have 3 different scholarship. One is basically a merit-based scholarship where a student can get 30%, basically maybe 10 to 20%, which you said. A scholarship, which is a big amount, and then you have to maintain a GPA of 3.75 to have that scholarship going for the 2nd semester and the 3rd semester. The second is a scholarship which is called ambassador scholarship, where a student can basically be an ambassador of the university, and under you can select 2 students. So people can take the advantage of applying early, and they can get 2,000 euro scholarship. And the third is a early discount scholarship. It's a commitment that you are going to give to EU Business School that you want to join EU Business School. So you are applying early. So when you are applying early, you are giving that commitment. You also have to pay the deposit early to prove that your commitment is strong enough. And you get, again, basically a 10% discount, I guess, on the 10 to 20%. Am I right? Can you just tell us a little bit on the scholarship part?
Correct. So the ambassador scholarship and the merit-based scholarship was spot on. Ambassadors 2,000 off on the entire year tuition fee. The third one is basically the early bird discount. So just to put it in a nutshell, for the early bird, until the 31st of October, we have a 7% on the entire year tuition fee for the masters and MBA for any student applying for the March 2023 intake. In November, any student applying for March 2023, again for masters or for MBA, the discount will drop down to 5%. So the nearer you approach an intake, the lower the scholarship will be. But the good thing about it is it's on the entire year tuition fee. Students only have to basically adhere to the deadline, which will be 2 weeks in case of an approval.
Just to clear doubts, so if a bachelor student is doing for a 3 years program and a master basically is 1 year program, so when you're saying 5% is on 5% of the entire 3 years tuition fee?
No, for the bachelor students, it will be on year 1. And for the 2nd year, if the students pay the entire year tuition fee upfront, they can get a 7% discount as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So early you apply, you can reduce your tuition fee, and this is one way of you can reduce your cost. So perfect. In terms of basically the last part is basically students who know about the admission and then the visa part. So in terms of admission, if the student is interested in applying to EU Business School and he applies, does he have to pay the application fee upfront, or he can pay the application fee later?
So considering the fact that student is coming through you, Richard, which is through EACC, we will be waiving the application fee for the beginning part of it. And then once the student gets the offer letter, that is when they can settle the application fee.
So this is important. This is very important. I wanted to that's why I asked this question, is that you don't have to pay application fee upfront. You can check with your profile. You can see whether your profile is eligible. If you get an offer letter, after the offer letter, you can pay the application fee. So you don't have to pay the application fee initially. You can pay application fee later. And now basically regarding once the application is submitted, how much is the turnaround time?
So the turnaround time is pretty quick. It's going to be about 48 to 72 hours. Once the application, when I say turnaround time, you need to understand once the entire application file is submitted, which is either with the IELTS registration or the IELTS scorecard or TOEFL registration or TOEFL scorecard. Okay, we conduct an interview. That can be done within 24 to 48 hours. And post that interview, it takes another 48 to 72 hours to process the application file with the admissions department at the respective campuses.
Okay. Now, if the student has not taken the TOEFL or IELTS, they have registered for it and they take the TOEFL IELTS later, or can the student have an option of taking the internal English test and get a conditional offer letter? How does it work?
So at this point in time, Richard, that used to be an option, not anymore. So we have changed and tweaked our requirements a bit, but there's no internal English test anymore. It's just the IELTS registration that we accept at this point in time.
Okay. And for bachelor's as well as for master's, the requirement is 6.5. Am I right?
So it can be 6.5 is the thing, but we, on an exceptional basis, we will also be accepting 6, since it was such a change from the internal English test. The 6 is also doable on an overall basis.
Fine. So there is basically a chance, if your English is reasonably good, by your interview, bachelor's with 6 band is acceptable.
Even for the masters.
Even for the masters. Perfect.
Yes.
So students with IELTS 6 band can apply to your business school, provided you have a reasonably good English proficiency. The last part is on the visa factor. There are some changes in basically the German visa. So if you can just highlight us about what are those changes and how should a student prepare. I know these changes are not big, but still, if you can just highlight those changes for us.
So I would say it's a positive change to begin with. For the German visa procedure, what they have done, in my understanding, in the last 1 month is basically there was too much of a load on the German embassy in India. So they have broken up the German visa procedure into 2 different bits. The first part, I would say, is basically wherein students verify their documents. Okay, so the academic documents along with the IELTS results. The IELTS results are not really required for this process, but your academic documents are verified. They are sent to an office called the APS office. Okay, it takes about anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks for students for the APS office to return to the student and give them an APS certificate, which verifies their documents. Now, going a little bit deeper into the process, what we have got to know is that once the student submits their documents to the APS office in New Delhi, so they have to courier the copies of the documents, they should be going to the College Exam Controller Board. So let's say you're based out of Mumbai, you do not need to go to Mumbai University. You need to go to, say, for example, your college is Jai Hind. You need to go to Jai Hind College, go to the Exam Controller Board and tell them that they will be expecting an email from the APS. Okay, once they send an email verifying the documents, okay, and all the documents have been verified, the students get what we call an APS certificate. Okay, if, for instance, any document is not verified, they are not able to verify any of the documents or 1 or 2 of the documents, the APS office will still grant you a report. They won't grant you a certificate, but they'll grant you an APS report. With this APS certificate or with the APS report, students can apply for a visa appointment and hence submit their visa. What the positives of this is, point number 1 is the visa appointments will be more readily available, because until the APS certificate or report comes in a student's hand, they're not going to be able to apply for an appointment. So the appointments won't be blocked and locked up. The second point is that once the students submit all their documents with the APS certificate or report to the visa office, the turnaround time for the visa will be a lot shorter. So what we are anticipating is that it will be approximately about 8 weeks, during which this entire process should get done and over with. Another point I would like to mention is that the APS certification cost, when you register yourself, when you pay online for the APS certification, it's 18,000 rupees, which in euros is 225 euros. And we will be refunding the 225 euros on the first semester tuition fee once students get the APS certificate or report in hand. Okay.
So this is very important change. The reason why this changes is because to understand that your documents are genuine. If your documents are genuine, then you are a genuine student. So this process will help the visa officer to understand that the document that you have submitted, which is your academic documents, are genuine documents. to once the genuine documents, basically you get a APS certificate, or basically you get a report, you can apply for your visa. And this will fasten your visa process. Once you have that, the visa officer doesn't have to verify these things, because these things are already been verified. So they will look at your finances. They will see whether your finances are good enough to match the education requirement, and you will have you will probably get your visa faster. And as Shanice mentioned, overall the visa success rate is good for U Business School. So it is very important to take the advantage of this and to apply early. Only thing that you have to do is to apply early, so that you don't lose out on time because of this additional documentation procedure that has come in. That's important. Now, when is this going to be implemented? Is it going to be implemented for the Jan 2023 intake, or are they looking for some, giving some more time?
Yeah, so the APS process is already in place. My colleague Nick actually had a meeting with the APS director 2 weeks ago. So they've already received 2,500 applications for the APS certificate. So ideally, any student applying now with, basically post the 1st of November, any student that has a visa appointment needs to have the APS certificate. So what they did is that they canceled the whole November list. So any student that was on the waiting list or had an appointment, everything was cancelled. And now only unless the student has a certificate, they can apply for the appointment and hence apply for the visa.
Okay, so it's mandatory for all students, undergraduate as well as for master's student.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. So last, but the question is about basically, few things in your presentation that you found were strong points of U Business School, which you want to highlight it again for our students, so that our students apply, as early as possible.
Great. So I think one point that you mentioned is apply early as possible. Point number 2 is, as you mentioned, EU network. The EU network is really strong. We've been around for 50 years. The job placement rate, success rate is 96%, which is really good. There is no shortage of any part-time jobs, internships, or even full-time jobs for that matter. The master's program is a very feasible program for any student that is applying on a lower budget to Europe. I think I would say about 20 lakhs with living expenses, tuition fee structure. I think everything is sorted out in that budget. So that is a program that sells really well, and students really appreciate that program. It's a specialization focused program. The 18 months job seekers visa, of course, in Munich is something that we also like to highlight. And of course, the early bird discounts, which are coming to an end soon. So the faster you apply for the March intake specifically, the better it is. If you are planning on applying for the January intake, I would say hold your horse a bit with the APS process. If you want to be on campus on the first day of class, I would say apply for the March intake and start the process now.
Perfect. Start the process now. That last word is very important, because it's important that you apply early so that you can finish the process early. You can apply for your visa early so that you are on campus on time. Thank you very much, Shanice. Thank you for the wonderful presentation and for asking all those questions, for answering all those questions. It's very nice to basically connect with you.
Thank you so much, Richard. And thank you for all the students who took time out of their busy Friday and came here today for the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and have a great weekend ahead, and belated happy Diwali if that is a thing. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Shanice.
Bye.